Sales leadership involves setting the vision and creating a plan and process to achieve it. Make the investment up front. If you don't plan, you plan to fail. A sales plan is not a spreadsheet. It's not a quota, and it's definitely not optional. A sales plan is your business's operating system for revenue. Without one, you're not just risking missing targets. You're flying blind in a storm of complexity with no instruments to guide you. Welcome to Driving Growth, the go-to-market podcast for traditional B2B businesses that are looking to build systems to create predictable revenue. In short, turning their company into a revenue factory. I'm your host, Steve Whittington, president of Roadmap, and a believer in one simple truth. Sustainable growth is not an accident. It's engineered, and my company, Roadmap, is a builder of go-to-market systems. On today's show, why most sales plans fail and how to build one that won't. So we've heard work smarter, not harder. We've all heard it. We've also heard that if you don't plan, you're planning to fail. But when it comes to sales planning, unfortunately, lots of teams are operating without a framework for their plan to enable success. So in today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on how top-performing revenue teams build sales plans, not just for growth, but for predictability, profitability, and long-term scale. And we'll get real about the silent killers of growth, vague targets, disconnected tactics, and most foremost, missing math. So let's start with why you need a plan. So I guess what happens when you don't have a plan? You've got reps that are chasing the wrong leads. You have managers that aren't able to coach on what success needs to look like. Your forecasts are kind of hope casts. They become fiction. And your revenue growth, well, you get what you get and you don't get upset because you don't have a strategy, you don't have a plan to execute and measure against and make course corrections. So in contrast, a real sales plan aligns your team around who you serve and how you win. Now, there's a through line throughout driving growth. Deep customer understanding is where you need to start. So when you have that, this makes your sales plan makes your resourcing strategic. It gets tied to outcomes. You're not reactive. You turn the random acts of selling into repeatable, scalable systems, and you have the math that actually is rationale for what you're doing. So no more guesswork. It's mathematical. It's sales as a science. All right, so you're a revenue leader, you're going to go build your plan. Now, I like to build plans that get used, that are simple. So as an organization, we use EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. They have a VTO, which is a Vision Traction Organizer. It's basically like a 2-page strategic plan. We make our sales plans for ourselves, for our clients, with a 2-page executive summary that has all the core components that you need in a sales plan, and then you can build out additional stuff in appendix and supporting information. So what are those core pillars that you need to reference? Well, first and foremost, you need to have clear sales goals and revenue targets, not just grow 30%. You need to get surgical. You need to define what you want to achieve, specific unit numbers that you're going to sell, the amount of new dealers or new retailers or new accounts that you're going to acquire. You need to use historical data to set realistic, measurable goals. And these goals also need to be tied to stages of the funnel. So meetings booked, quote sent, applications. We'll get into that because that talks about critical numbers, which are something that you need to be able to drive the activities of your sales team. So the first thing is you start with clear sales goals. So to dive in that a lot more, you can reference How to Create a Forecast, Not a Hopecast, episode 19, season 1. And we go into great length about that. So that's the first thing. Make sure you have very clear goals, revenue targets, and all detailed in a forecast that starts to use your mathematical model. Now, you've got your goals set. That's great. That's the first one of the 6 key components. You then need to revisit your ideal client, your ICP, and the personas and the buyers within it. You have everyone selling to everyone is not a strategy. You really need to do a deep dive every single year, because your business evolves, as to who your best customers are. The ones that close fast, stay long, and expand over time. What are those firmographics? What are the motivations of those people? What are the things that get them to buy and continue to buy from you? What are you solving for them? What value are you providing for them? What's the business case that you can be building for them? You identify them, you dial them in, and you make sure that goes across the entire organization, from marketing to customer success to delivery, and your sales team knows them inside and out. So that's the second core component. And arguably it's the first thing that everybody needs to understand. But if you're building a sales plan, you already have existing customers, set your targets, but then do a deep dive into re-understanding your customer. It's a mountain with no top. You got to keep doing it year after year after year. Okay, so we've got those 2 components sorted out. What's the next one? Well, how are you going to do this? What's your action plan? What are your go-to-market motions? Are you doing inbound, outbound? Are you doing some account-based marketing or selling? You've got to pick your lanes, and you have to map the plays, and you have to see how efficient they are. Okay, you have to detail specific activities and strategies your team will use to find leads, engage prospects, close deals. You need to define services of your existing accounts, the management of them, tier them, how you're going to expand them, right? And here's the thing. If 80% of your business comes from existing accounts every year, you need to have a very detailed motion about how you're going to retain and expand those clients and manage that reoccurring business that you get for them. So resource accordingly to where your business comes from. So when you have a forecast and you know that 80% of your revenue targets are coming from existing business, well, resource accordingly. A lot of times acquisition gets over-resourced because that's how we grow. We forget that we can grow a lot from existing customers. So resource accordingly. So the next component is you have you have an action plan. These are the plays that we're going to be doing over the year to be able to hit our targets. This is what we have to do for acquisition. This is what we have to do for retention. Here's how we're going to do it. And you will work with marketing to make that happen. Now, those plays need to be detailed with activities and measurement. So, for instance, it might be that you need to do this amount of outreach to be able to get this many people that are interested in taking a conversation about engaging in business with you. And that has to happen on a monthly basis. So that would be activity metrics for an outbound play. So once you have your goals, deep understanding of your customer, you've started to map out the plays that you're going to do. Well, now you can do resource allocation. What are the needed sales tools? What are the headcount? What's the technology that you need? And this has to be optimized, not bloated. It has to be lean because you have to be efficient with what you're doing. And your plan, obviously the motions that you're going to do have to be tied into ROI and dollars. So with that in place, you can now sort of start to structure what you need for resources and headcount. Here's where you have to validate with the next core component, your metrics and KPIs that matter. We in episode 1, season 1, we talked about mathematical models. We dove into it in episode 3 as well with acquisition and retention motions and expansion motions. These metrics, every company has what I call critical numbers that if they're hit, success for the organization flows. So for example, at Roadmap, we know because we track a lot of stuff, we have our mathematical models in place, that if we get X amount of discovery meetings per month, and we have this X for a utilization rate of our people, and of course we get a nice customer satisfaction score back. So what you have is leading, actual, and lagging metrics. We will hit all our numbers, all our profit goals, all that stuff will fall into place. Because we know what our close rate is on net new business. We know the deal velocity. We know that if we hit a certain amount of utilization rate, that our people are being used effectively and serving the clients effectively, which then leads into the CSAT. So we have 3 critical numbers that we can glance at as an org, and we know that we're doing okay or we've got an issue that we have to solve for. Every company has them, and a lot of stuff flows into it, and a bunch of other key performance metrics. So you need to figure what those are out and get this mathematical model in place so that you can make adjustments. Now, a bunch of things that you need to know. You need to know your customer acquisition cost, your customer lifetime value, your win rates, the deal velocity, your average transaction size and average account size. If you're not measuring those fundamental basics, you're not really managing or measuring your pipeline. You're just kind of watching what's happening. You can't do appropriate planning to do course correction if you don't have some of those fundamentals in place. But there are baseline stuff that you need in the mathematical model. Again, you can reference like episode 1 or episode 3, and you can download the Revenue Factory Toolkit to get some of that stuff. You get that basic stuff in there so you can build out that mathematical model to determine what you need to do. That has to be in place. That has to be trued up because it directs what activities your reps are doing. So let's put this on the court. You've said that you have to do this amount of outbound activity to be able to get things to progress to where you have a meeting where you can discuss business and move a deal forward. It may be that the modeling of that, it turns out that you thought it would be X, it really needs to be Y, because you've got a volume metric where a conversion rate is not what you thought it would be. So either you need to figure out how to increase that conversion rate, or you have to add more numbers to that volume metric. One of the two. That's why you need to have this mathematical modeling in place so that as things unfold, you can adjust and react to what's happening in real time. Okay, we've talked about the first 5 things. You now have to get into your team structure and process clarity. That's the last thing that you need in a sales plan. So who does what? Where's the handoff? What's the process from the first touch to close one to actually landing and expanding the account? What's your overall proven process that you take customers through? So you need to define the roles and responsibilities of your team members, make sure there's clarity, accountability. That could be, quotas and territories for some types of reps. It could be different types of functionality that they have to do. You have an accountability chart saying you do this function, this function, this function. You have to make sure when you review your entire proven process of how you acquire customers, how you keep customers, how you expand customers, all has to be detailed and resourced. And so now your team knows who does what, and there's complete clarity on the responsibilities within your entire revenue team and your entire proven process for success of your org. Okay? So this also happens when you look at certain things that you might have to look at how much effort is required to hit these goals. And again, that's where the mathematical modeling comes in. So if one of your volume metrics is off, like if you thought it was 100 outreaches per month and it's actually 500 outreaches per month, you might need to resource it differently because that's a 5x difference. So you'll figure that out. We'll get back to the show in just a moment, but I wanted to take this chance to tell you about a new initiative at Roadmap. We have launched a go-to-market acceleration fund, and what we are doing is research with organizations to rank them with their go-to-market maturity. Now, here's the fun part, is that 5 organizations are going to be eligible for a $5,000 in funding to help them grow. For more information and to apply, go to weareroadmap.com/go-to-market acceleration fund. Now, let's get back to the show. So we've gone over the components that you need to have in a sales plan. What's the step-by-step guide that you need to do to build your sales plan? Well, the first thing you need to do is audit your current state. So that's where you can look at, how are you winning certain types of deals, where revenue is stalling, what assets do you have in place, what assets do you need. You review your accounts, you review the mathematical model that you hopefully had in place last year to see what really happened versus what what you predicted and what really happened. And that's a really great exercise, because at the beginning of the year, you're going to put in metrics and say, geez, we believe our close rate is this based off historical numbers from, say, 2024. For 2025, we project that we'll have this close rate. And, here you're sitting and you're planning for 2026, and there's a gap there. There's a delta there. So now you have a real number upon reflection. So you audit what's happened in the current state so that you can push that forward into the future state. You then need to set these goals that translate into action. So this is, again, where you have the pipeline math in place. So when you look at your forecast, not your hopecast, you're like, okay, we want to get to X amount of revenue. In order to do that, we have to get this amount of business from existing accounts, and we're going to have to get some net new revenue, and you're going to have to break down all the goals and actions it's going to take to acquire that net new revenue to put it into pipeline math. So that's going to, breaking that down is getting into a mathematical model, which then translates into actions that need to be taken, which then tells you that, hey, we're going to do these types of plays. These are the actions that we're going to do that's going to get us these numbers, okay? And so you set the goals, you translate it into action, you define the plays, and you then mathematically model it into your pipeline. Of course, you want to have territory, quota, account plans, that kind of stuff. They're not just numbers, they're behavior drivers. And so, you'll get mini plans on a per rep basis once you assign them what their targets are. How many units do you need from your channels? How many units do you need from each account? What kind of production you need from each rep? And you need to support them with the reality, with what they can do and what that mathematical model could be. So with all that in place, you can then really build out your sales motions, the motions that you're going to do, inbound, outbound, at direct mail, whatever you might be doing for acquisition, what you're going to be doing with your existing business for retention and expansion. You design for efficiency to support your goals. Let me unpack that word. Very, very often we look at the efficiency of various different motions. So a lot of teams are stuck in the dogma of we've always done it this way. But when you actually say we spend this amount of dollars and this is the results we get compared to another motion, you see what is more efficient. When you have limited resources, you want to allocate your dollars and efforts to what's the most efficient motion for hitting your goals. So you can lay this all out and then you can litmus test it for efficiency and then apply your resourcing accordingly. And that gets into the next thing that you do is, as that process, you are resourcing and designing your team for success and, and comping things accordingly. So if 90% of your business is existing business, well, you better comp for expansion as opposed to acquisition. If you need 60% new logos every year, you're on this continual, project basis, you have to acquire, there's not a lot of ongoing reoccurring business. Well, you better reward those new logo acquisitions. So looking at your plays will tell you where you actually have to design your resourcing and your comp. So the next thing is that leaders will make a plan and they will often make it too big and too complex. And that's where I talk about having a simple 2-page summary so everybody sees what you're doing. You revisit every quarter to know what you have to do that quarter to hit your plans, and you update your mathematical models. But if you have it as a Google Doc or somewhere in SharePoint, it's a forgotten file. And so you need to have it something like, I want people to print this off, put it on their desk so they can look at it in references. But then the last thing is to use this plan, use the activities that you've done, use a scorecard to track, to look at it, to learn, to iterate. You have, the weekly scorecards, quarterly reviews. So this plan is not something that'll work unless it has this feedback loop. It's just a theory that this is what we're going to do. So make it come alive. Take it, have it so that everybody has it, spread it throughout the organization, and then have a scorecard that measures and tracks it, that you learn from and you iterate from so that you can drive results. Which leads to my final thought about a sales plan. Sales plans have to be strategy in action. Just as you don't build a house without a blueprint why would a business be built without a sales plan? More than that, building a sales plan without understanding your unit economics, your economic model behind your revenue engine, you're just flying blind. Your job isn't just to, create a plan to try to chase something. Your job is to hit a number and build a predictable, scalable, and profitable revenue system, a revenue factory. And that starts by treating your go-to-market motions like the factory lines they are. Measure them, optimize them, lead with strategy, not just hustle and reaction. A sales plan needs clear goals, a defined target market, and detailed action plan with specific tactics. Some supporting things you can have in your sales plan. You can have, executive summary that you share with your stakeholders. That's that 2-page, right? Market and competitor analysis. You could have some training guides. You clearly have timing and milestones as to different things you're going to hit and different plans that you're going to execute upon. But again, have a summary that's 2 pages that everybody can action upon and have all the details supporting to help you with your needs. Sales leadership involves setting the vision and creating a plan and process to achieve it. Make the investment up front. If you don't plan, you plan to fail. Build a plan with your team and then have fun executing it with them. If you liked what you heard, go to roadmapagency.com/podcast to download the Revenue Factory Toolkit, in which you will receive mathematical models and a framework for building your go-to-market system. Also, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes dropping the first and third Wednesday of every month. I'm Steve Whittington. Thanks for listening. Keep building your revenue factory one brick at a time.